Hello, in this episode of Day Job presented by Sparesbox, it's time to give our iLoad a tune. In our last episode of Day Job with our Hyundai iLoad, you would have seen that the car, although we said it drove a lot better, it didn't really make any extra power in the dyno. What we've discovered essentially is that the Hyundai is torque limiting the power of the car. So first gear feels a lot quicker because it's not reaching peak torque, so it feels a lot better than before. But once you get into second and beyond, it doesn't really feel any different, simply because the ECU is trying to manage the amount of torque that the car is making, and it didn't make any more power. But if you actually listen to the car when you drive, you can hear changes in exhaust note as the car's probably lowering the boost to make the same torque. So essentially, although it's not making a lot more power, it's much more responsive, and the car is probably making the power easier. So how do we get some more power? Well, when it comes to diesel tuning, I'm certainly not an expert, but I've done enough research to work out that most cars are either a flash tune or some type of interceptor. So what is an interceptor? Well, essentially an interceptor takes a signal from somewhere in the engine bay, either a boost sensor, an airflow meter, etc., and you splice into the wiring for that sensor, and this little box basically has that come in, come back out to go back to the factory ECU, and it modifies the signal from the sensor and essentially tricks the ECU into making more power. The tune inside the ECU itself isn't actually changing. Essentially, it's just altering the signal to and from the ECU. And in this case, this little box essentially has a circuit board inside it, and it changes the signal and has its own little tune inside this box. Now, why did we decide to go down this interceptor path? Well, we spoke to a few people about the iLoad, and I guess our circle of friends that would help us tune it had never done one. And so we kind of looked online and went, well, what's the best option? We don't want to be doing custom tunes and wiring things in or trying to custom flash tune the thing. So we thought, let's just buy something straight off the shelf that someone like yourself watching could just order it and plug it in. So I stumbled across the guys at Chip My Diesel Australia, and their website was just filled with different chips like this for various different turbo diesels. Spoke to the guys. They told me essentially it'll do what I want to do with this thing, which is make a bit more power and torque. Told me how it works, etc. And basically I had two options. They have a normal one and then they have this Pro one. This Pro one has a plus and minus on it, which basically means you can take the predetermined tune that's apparently a good balance between power and economy, and you can press plus or minus. And I said, well, how long do I press plus for? He goes, until it doesn't make any more power, because the factory will actually torque limit once again. So if you press up and the power doesn't go up, well then just come back down again. If you want more fuel economy and less power, you can just press down on this thing. So it's pretty simple. The instructions are very straightforward. I've just got to undo two plugs, splice it in, cable tie it in, and apparently off we go. So I'm going to get it in the car, and then we'll get over to Red Sun and see if it makes a difference. So after unsuccessfully looking around for the boost sensor plug, what I found out after ringing the guys a little bit more research is essentially earlier model iLoads have a single channel that you can splice into for an interceptor like this, while later models had a dual channel. So mine just quite simply doesn't need this plug, but they supply in the loom so that it'll work on basically every model of iLoad up until now. So all we're going to do now is basically, I guess, move this wiring and tuck it out of the way and cable tie it securely, and we're done. Got this big plug, which you then plug into this. You then cable tie it all out of the way, start her up. So I'm going to use some electrical tape to basically block off these plugs, because if they're floating around the engine bay, gunk, debris and crap will get in there. So it's always a good idea to basically protect that plug you're not using by just covering it up with something. you expect that?
Not 20 kilowatt gain, no.
So that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah,
So a chip has put its money where its mouth is.
I'd say so, definitely. Yeah.
I think so. Well, that was strange. It actually flared massively and just didn't want to change gears then, which will destroy the quarter mile time at a mile an hour. Very odd, it's never done that before. I think what I'm going to have to probably try doing on the next pass is probably just take off and maybe either put it into drive, or I'm going to have to like lift off the throttle slightly to try and get it to change gears, because I wanted to short shift and ride the torque curve, but it just wouldn't change gears. It was very odd. Did a good burnout, wanted to take off okay, but yeah, weird. I'm gonna need to look into this. That is definitely slower than I expected, but with the way that was slurring gear changes, I don't know what to say. It's 62.7, but what do you expect on crappy tyres? Mile an hour, so 17.8 at 76 mile an hour, which, yeah, nah, I'm not, something's not right there. I've got to work out what's going on with that gear change and get to the bottom of it, because yeah, that's not right at all. It was just terrible once on the move. Okay, it did another good burnout as expected. So what I tried this time is what I call traffic light mode for racing the iLoad, and that is don't use the accelerator against the foot brake at all, just tromp it. I don't know if it's because I've done a burnout first or whatever, but it was just lazy when I went, but then it took off and then it actually changed gears this time. So it launched a little bit worse, but it actually changed gears, well, as good as an automatic iLoad does. So let's see if the time is quicker, shall we? So looking at the data, we definitely 60'd worse as I predicted, with a 2.879 versus a 2.7. So that's what, almost, that's a tenth and a half. So that's 3/10 over the quarter we'd lose by 60ing worse, but we're 3/10 quicker. So if we could get the launch of the first pass and the run of the second, then we should be able to get down to like a 17.2, 17.1. But it's still just torque limits and just doesn't want to shift. It's very weird. I'm going to try another strategy on the last run and see what happens. But yeah, mile an hour was up at the 8th mile by 5 mile an hour. Yeah, wow. Yeah, some weird data. So we're just going to try and combine the best of the two, and off we go. Let's give it a go. So, we got the 60 back, 2.7. Well, not back, but back to the first run. But we kept the 64 mile an hour to the half, and we went 17.3 at 78. So it looks like I'm doing this debrief on my own for the iLoad after Grub decided he hated me for getting him to do it in the first place in our last episode. But it's a pretty simple debrief. Our first criteria was to at least get the lost power back, which we did by cleaning everything out and giving it a birthday. Secondly, we wanted some more performance. Now, we probably didn't get the performance everywhere we wanted to have it. We certainly got it in some areas. The car is definitely quicker in first gear off the lights. It definitely has more torque and power down low, which is great for towing. So the car tows better than ever before. But the power falls over up top. So once you're trying to drag race and you're going through the gears, when you do the gear change and the revs drop back down, it's already above the point at which power is no more than before. So we don't really have any extra performance, I guess, in the top end of the rev range. So the quarter miles, no better than factory. But down low, we have more grunt, so better for towing. And it is quicker in first gear because it doesn't seem to suffer from torque management issues in first gear. So first gear is way quicker than what it used to be, but as soon as you get into second, you can actually hear the change in exhaust note as it's torque managing the car and pulling power and torque back. Frustrating for that side of the performance, but overall, for what we use the car for, performance has been increased. And the last criteria was we could do burnouts again, which we most certainly can. So overall, is it worth giving your turbo diesel work hack a big birthday? It most certainly is.